You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 158. Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kaylee
and Josiane from EduCalm. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life.
Hello there and welcome. We are so happy to have you here with us today. So if you've been feeling maybe overwhelmed or burnt out or unmotivated or maybe just kind of not like yourself lately, perfectionism might be the problem. In this episode, we're talking with Shibani Joshi about letting go of perfectionism. Shibani is an experienced journalist who's covered business, technology, and general news for global media outlets including ABC News, Fox Business World, Fox News, Channel, Yahoo, Finance, and Huffington Post. She previously anchored a daily markets show on the Fox Business Network and has her own tech segment across Fox's networks. Shibani has interviewed hundreds of corporate CEOs and executives from companies including Apple, Citigroup, Ford, Google, McDonald's, and Uber. She has also reported extensively on the floors of the NYSE, NASDAQ, and NYMEX exchanges. Shibani is a graduate of the University of Oklahoma and holds an MBA from the Harvard Business School. She currently lives in the Bay Area with her 3 children. Now, I think if we were to do a survey of teachers, we would probably find that overwhelmingly most would self-identify as perfectionists or recovering perfectionists or definitely have perfectionism tendencies. So I think this is going to be a really awesome conversation for all teachers to listen to. And we're also going to be speaking to the experience of being a woman and perfectionism and how those of us that identify as women take on kind of this personality or expectation of perfectionism, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. I'm going to be sharing some kind of personal experiences in this episode. So I'm excited to be connecting with you today in this way. Let's get into the interview. But first, we're excited to hear from today's sponsor. Do you want to incorporate social-emotional learning and mindfulness into your classroom to support students with mental health, focus, self-regulation, and emotional intelligence? With so much on your plate as a teacher, you probably just don't have time to get trained, develop resources, and teach the lessons yourself. Plus, you need time for self-care too. That's why we developed EduCalm, to support teachers like you. EduCalm is a fully bilingual English and French co-regulation program created by teachers. This program provides everything you'll need to build self-regulation, mindfulness, and social-emotional skills with your students through a 5-minute daily practice. With EduCalm, you don't have to be the expert. Just log in, press play, and participate with your students as you all prepare your minds and bodies for calm and focused teaching and learning together. Go to educalm.com to learn more and start using our free resources. Again, that's educalm.com, spelled EduCalme. And now let's get into the interview. Hello, Shibani. We're so excited to have you here with us today.
Hi there, Kaylee. How are you?
I'm doing really good. It is a snowy day here today, so I'm all cozy warm in my office.
It sounds dreamy, but probably dreamier than it really is. I'm in California, and we dream of snow.
Yeah, everyone wants what they can't have, right? Exactly. You want the opposite.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. So my name is Shibani Joshi. I am a national business and technology journalist. I'm a public speaker. I'm a blogger as well. And I am a mom of 3. And I really, in the last, I would say half a decade or so, but I mean, my whole life, but certainly in the last half a decade or decade or so, speak a lot about women's empowerment, particularly as it pertains to work-life balance and in the workplace. largely driven by my own experiences, and my desire to be more of myself in all parts of my life, and realizing that so many of us women and working women feel really challenged in terms of finding that magic balance, if there is such a thing. And so I talk a lot about that topic as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to bring this conversation to the podcast because we've never specifically talked about the experience that kind of is unique to women within teaching. But if you walk into a school, you'll quickly notice that majority of teachers are women. So this is a profession that has a very kind of female experience.
Yeah.
And I think that perfectionism is something that really pops up a lot for teachers. Maybe it's just the type of person that is drawn to the teaching profession, or maybe it's because there's a lot of women that go into the teaching profession. So can you speak a little bit more about your knowledge of like how things are different for women in the workforce?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of this has become much more apparent to us as women and even men in society in the wake of the pandemic. We are seeing that so many more women are raising their hands and saying, this is hard, but we have these expectations, and as educators, I don't know how educators managed the last 2 years doing everything that they were doing and then balancing the home. It was an impossible task for all of us, and then particularly those like educators and first responders and those that really had to step up in the wake of the pandemic. And the statistics show that, you know, no matter what our education levels are, even often our professions, that the majority of household tasks are bore by women, and that we, you know, the New York Times started talking about this term called the mental load. And it's that checklist that all of us have, as mothers and often as women, of, okay, I got to call the plumber. Oh, the dishwasher soap is running out. I got to schedule Johnny's pediatrician appointment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all of that takes up real estate, not just in our space, but decreases our quality of life, right? Because we take on that burden, we feel stressed by that burden. And it is something that I believe women are more unified in talking about and bringing about to the surface more than ever.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And even just like as a teacher, we have such a large mental load. So even for teachers that don't have a family at home or a partner at home, that mental load is so huge because you're constantly thinking of a million different types of to-do lists and things that you can't forget, that it can be really exhausting. So yeah, I've definitely experienced that kind of mental load burnout. And recently it became so apparent to me, this mental load that I was carrying, that I didn't even recognize I was carrying, which I found really interesting because, you know, the work that I've been doing within myself for the past like 10 years really has been learning how to let go of perfectionism, learning how to find balance in my work and life, and really setting up systems within my home life and my work life to ensure that I'm not pushing myself too hard and not asking too much of myself. And yet recently I got really sick. I was joyfully pregnant but really got sick in the first trimester and like couldn't get out of bed for 4 months.
Oh, wow.
And the guilt and shame that I felt for not being able to like pull my weight around the house and manage things around the house and having to ask my partner for a lot of help. I was so shocked by how much guilt I felt for needing to ask for support and recognizing how many little things I actually did around the house, not because my partner was asking me to do it, but because it was just like, I think I just learned it from seeing my mother, my grandmother take on that mental load, that I just naturally took that on within our household. And so it was a really great experience because I got to recognize how all of these pressures I was putting on myself to like, I'm the one that creates the grocery list. I'm the one that makes the vet appointment. I'm the one that pays the bills, and not like only because I put that on myself. So to then be able to distribute that with my husband and be like, hey, okay, so I'm doing all of these things here. Which one do you want to take over? That was a really great opportunity for us to kind of like redistribute how things were being managed within our household. And I'm like so much better off for it now because that balance is better.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about the circumstances that brought it about, but that is what is absolutely needed and what a lot of households were doing for different catalysts that were brought about during the pandemic, because women were expected, we take on the traditional roles because we do see our mothers playing those traditional roles and our grandmothers, and we quote unquote inherit a lot of that. And then we have, I think, a sense of pride or stake in certain things in a different way. Like, my former partner, like, may not care if the playroom was clean or not, or, what the table looked like when we hosted people over for dinner, but I did, right? So there's differences in terms of, I guess, investment or stake or importance of certain things in the house. But frankly, I think also what I see is, these standards of perfection put on women that only women try and clamor for, right? So the term like perfect body, perfect wife, perfect house, perfect mother, all of these things, maybe there's a perfect husband, I don't know, but that word perfect, I think, gets associated with women and things that are within the sphere of the female life and livelihood way more than the male livelihood. And I think that's one of the undercurrents and toxic undercurrents that, I am talking about in more public spheres, because I think it fuels a lot of the energy of what we're doing, right? We've got to make, healthy food for us and our families. We've got to have a clean home. We've got to make sure the groceries are stocked, and maybe our partner helps us with that. But we really are the one that is in charge of maintaining household order. And then we get judged for it, for not doing it in a certain way or doing it in a certain way. Like we get respect and we get, the admiration of our peers. And, we've all done this, gone to a birthday party and it's just to the nines, and cute little embellishments and triangle cut sandwiches and no crusts and, just like beautiful people who are just like born hostesses. I always come out in those, events and I'm like, I feel bad about myself. I don't know how to do that. Right. And it's that sort of standard of perfection that I think also, subtly, works against women. And we're in charge of that. Right. I think we're in charge of that for ourselves. And that for me is the empowering solution within that.
Yeah. And I think that, and at least for myself, and as I was kind of like doing the work within myself and with a counselor to figure out like, why am I feeling so much guilt about my needing to rest while I'm growing a human inside of me? Like, why am I feeling so shameful about that? And kind of recognized that throughout my life, being a woman in science, being a woman in business, there's a lot of narrative around, or kind of this like sense that in order to be equal to the men in the same field, you have to do more. You have to look more professional, sound more professional. You have to give a little more than your counterpart that is male, almost like because you have to prove yourself. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that kind of has this sort of ingrained in them. I think that's something that as women, we kind of just grow up seeing that in order to be equal, we have to actually do more.
Yeah. And I believe that's true. And that is, part of the mental load and the struggle that we have in many different industries. And I particularly noticed that in business, that I had to work like a quote unquote man or be just as successful and perform at a very high level. I worked on Wall Street and I worked in corporate finance and I went to a top business school, and I was evaluated and judged at the same level of top performing men. And so I had to work really hard and showcase my competencies. But at the end of the day, also what I was judged by was, how did I dress? How did I come across? Was I warm enough? Was I too stern? Was I too permissive? Like, it's this extra, right, that women get judged by, that men have no idea about, that we spend a lot of time and a lot of effort working towards, worrying about. When I get together with other professional women, yes, we care about how do we manage these problems in our workplace, and maybe there's how do I handle this coworker or this boss or this employee, but often it is the questions of, how can I be happier? How can I have more balance? How can I take care of myself? All of these sort of other things that create desire and stress for us that really isn't quantified. We have to get our hair done a certain way. We have to, wear nice clothes, or, present ourselves in a certain way. We have to, depending upon your beauty routine, you might be getting your hair done, your nails done, waxing your this, whatever it is. That's a lot of time and a lot of money, right, that we're spending just to show up at the table to do our job. And men, and I particularly found this, the broadcasting industry, was, as a woman, an hour earlier than any male co-anchor or reporter that was out there, because we had to sit in the hair and makeup chair for 1 hour to get our hair teased and our fake eyelashes on. And that's like 5 hours every week for probably less pay. Who knows? I can't confirm, but that's real. That's real. That is a real difference that women live and experience in just showing up at the workplace.
Yeah. I can totally, even just in comparison of my getting ready to leave the house routine versus any male that I know, it's like, they're like, oh yeah, 15 minutes out the door. I'm like, I need an hour, but I have to shower and dry my hair and then style my hair and then put on my makeup and then, choose my outfit. And they're just like, jump in the shower, leave the house with wet hair, good to go.
Yeah. And let's not mistake. I mean, we get, Kaylee, benefits from that. Obviously, we can take pride in our appearance, and it's not to say, oh, let's just let it all go unkempt and I'm never going to dye my hair or, wax my eyebrows ever again. Like, I don't think that that's the anecdote either, and say, woe is us as women, we got to do all this stuff. But I do think it is about acknowledging that we have to work harder just to show up in the world. And then we're judged for it if we don't, and it's a lot of pressure. And that's part of what I've been experiencing in my own life. Turning 40, having a daughter, all of these things really making me think about, what rules do I want to live by that really serve me well and support me and allow me to thrive, instead of doing it for some sort of external validation or outside reason and feel like, oh, I need to do this in order to be, just to be considered like just to be like, show up in the world. I think we can show up however we want. We get to decide the rules that work for us. And if you don't want to, paint your nails, don't paint your nails. Like, who cares? But you shouldn't do it because you feel like everybody else is doing it. And that's sort of the calling card of what I have to do. That pressure is something that I am slowly trying to let go of in my own life.
Yeah. And how do you kind of distinguish what okay, what am I doing because it's something that I enjoy doing? Like I'm putting on makeup because it's fun for me. I like the artistry of applying makeup and it's a fun part of my morning. How do you distinguish in all these different areas of life, which parts am I doing for me and which parts am I doing for, just maybe out of habit or what society has told me is the right thing to do? Finding that balance.
That's a great question, Kaylee. And I think that's, it can be different for a lot of people, but the metric that I use is joy, right? Do I enjoy this? Do I get joy or satisfaction? Even another adjective to use. Does this satisfy me in some sort of way? It's funny because my 11-year-old would ask me, I'm like gonna go to the gym back in the old days, or like, every morning I wake up and I could be wearing leggings and a, tank top or whatever, but I always put on concealer and I always have cheek blush, and that's kind of my thing. And she's like, why do you wear makeup? Just to like sit around in the house or whatever? And I thought about it and I was like, well, what kind of message am I showing her that, you got to put on makeup? And well, that's not true, because I'll lie around the house on the weekends and in my glasses and I don't really care. But when I reflected on it, I told her, I said, I feel better when I present myself in a certain way. And I feel like I show up better in the world if I have some concealer and I have some cheek blush. Like I have this like oomph, I have like some power, and that's my metric, right? And I had this experience about getting my nails done. So when I was working on Fox News, like we'd have to get our nails done all the time. I was super like, I had to get my, just so much maintenance, right? And I hated it. It was like 1 hour that I had to do every week or every other week or whatever it was. And then when I left Fox, I was like, I'm never getting a manicure again. Like it's the biggest waste of time. I have 3 kids. Like who has an hour to go get their nails done and blah, blah, blah. And then actually, in the fall of last year, I had this desire. I was like, I think I was inspired by Kylie Jenner of all people, who I have no connection with, and I have like a totally different lifestyle. I work from home. I have 3 kids. Like, I'm driving to soccer practice and back. She had some Instagram posts of these like gorgeous, long, pointy, glamorous, glittery pink nails, and I was like, I want to do that. And so I took a picture and I took them to my like local salon, and I was like, I just want to get these outrageous nails, but can I like take my contacts out? Like, how does this all work? And I put them on, and I like felt like I was like Wolverine with these like long extensions, but I had fun with it. And like I had written off manicures and I thought that they were frivolous, and I was like, I'm going to simplify my life. And then I came back to that joy, satisfaction, enjoyment paradigm of this just makes me happy. And I don't have to do that very often, but it's about that, right? It is about, and especially because so much of our life shut down in the last 2 years. Life is so stressful. We have very little time. And as educators, you have even less time. It's like, spend your time on the things that bring you the greatest joy, and don't judge yourself for it. Like if it is sitting and, watching Netflix and you really enjoy it, let yourself have it and let go of that guilt, as you were talking about, Kaylee. It's that is for us to let go of. Nobody else. Nobody's going to say to you, you've earned it. You deserve it. No, we have to tell that to ourselves. And you don't have to run 5 miles to earn it. I wrote a piece on my blog piece about, sort of deserving fries. And like the last time I ordered French fries was probably like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, when I was in my 20s after a late night out and we were at a diner, right? And I needed something greasy to soak up my fun. But my kids order fries all the time, and I'll grab a couple, but I never feel like I can order them myself. And I had a conversation, and that's what was on my blog post about like, why do we as women, like, Why can't we order the fries? Why do we need permission, right? Why do I need to run 5 miles or run 5 miles after or skip dinner or whatever it is? And it's these rules that we put on ourselves that I believe we're all starting to question and having dialogue and discourse on. And the only metric I believe that works for me is, do I get joy from it? Right? And it's diminishing joy. I can't eat French fries 5 days in a row because I feel awful and then my jeans don't fit. So that joy is not there, but maybe after the first 5 or 10 fries, they're there and I let myself have it. And practicing that experience of joy, I think that's very important for women in particular as well.
I love that. And I think it's so important to look at our self-talk and when we're feeling these feelings of guilt or shame or whatever it is around doing something that would bring us joy or help us to rest or help us to refill our cup, if we're feeling these negative feelings towards them, it's so important to question it and be like, what is the voice inside my head telling me? And is it true? And that was something that I really practiced a lot as I was learning to work through this guilt and shame I was feeling about having to slow down so much, like I'd never had to slow down before. And I've, kind of lived my life having that like, yeah, I am woman, hear me roar type of person. Like I can do anything. I can push through anything. I'm so strong. And that was my identity. So when I had to let go of that, like I can do anything, and then really decipher, like, I have no energy. What is the most important thing? Like, what is going to bring me joy today and make me feel good today if I can only choose one thing? And looking at that negative voice that's talking to you and questioning it, like, is that true? And another trick I like to do is if a friend was in the same situation as me, what would I say to her? Like if I had a friend who was pregnant and couldn't leave her bed, I would be like, rest. This is great. Like this is all you should be doing. But yet I had such a hard time giving that encouragement to myself. So that was such a practice to practice telling myself that it's okay to rest and important to rest.
And it does take practice. I like that you use that word because it is something that, a lot of educators out there are teaching this to their own students, and it's become part of the lexicon of modern society, which is self-care. But most of us were not brought up in the era of having discussions in elementary school about self-care, right? And so I do believe the future generations are going to change the paradigm, and they're going to feel less guilty about self-care. But if you're not young and you're older and you've got these notions that are 20, 30, 40 plus years or more handed down to you, that shift to feeling less guilt and allowing yourself to rest is a tough one. And frankly, it's not the quote unquote American way. I mean, that is also not the story of this country and the backbone of this country. We are a work hard society, and that is for men also. I don't think that I think that men also have a different pressure around work where they don't feel like they can rest either. And I know this from the men in my life as well. And so I think also culturally and nationally, we have this ethos of, this hustle culture. And we're starting to see that it may not work for any of us. It does have some benefits, but it has, again, the diminishing benefits of if you end up burning out your body, and there's statistics that, big business schools put out there in terms of, burnout and attrition rates and all of these things. You hit a wall and you hit a plateau when you don't take that time to take care of the self. And the good news is in the workplace, because I'm covering business news every day, we are having those conversations inside corporate America and within larger spheres of how do we support women more and how do we support employees in whatever the future of work is going to look like, which could involve Zoom, which could involve virtual learning and remote learning and these opportunities for more digital experiences. How do you learn how to turn off? Because I think that's what we've learned also. It's really hard to turn off. And then how do you allow people out there to have some flexibility and more flexibility in their schedules and their structures and their routines so that people feel more empowered to do things in a way that works for them.
Yeah, that's so important. And as the world shifts and makes those changes, and I know in schools, we're really kind of that, as you said, we're talking about self-care in the classroom now. We're talking about wellness in the classroom now. And so then that question becomes, as life and the world becomes more flexible and we're being asked to make choices of how do we want to spend our time? What do we want our work to look like? Are we working from home? Or, lots of teachers now have the option to teach in remote schools. There's a lot of remote schools that are popping up.
Yeah.
And so then I think it's really important as the teacher to question, like, what makes me feel good? What are the things that I want? What do align with my values? And what is going to be the right context for me to let go of perfectionism and make sure that, if I'm working from home, does that mean all of a sudden I'm putting in longer days, or am I putting in shorter days? Like, that questioning process is so important.
Absolutely. And those are the dialogues that are also happening in the workplace right now, and particularly for educators, because it is it's been such a challenging 2 years. And, we are in an era where we realize we need to appreciate and support first responders, educators in so many more ways. And it starts with dialogue, right? What do people need? How do people want to work? How can we better support you? And then put resources around it. And I know that's happening in my own children's schools as well. And I've been so pleased to see the community rallying around supporting educators more. But these dialogues end up being the entryway for change. And we need to be having them on the regular. We need to be checking in on one another and then asking also for what we want and what we need. And I think that's also a huge part of it, is that being an advocate and speaking up for oneself in the workplace. And, I do believe that many environments are way more receptive than they ever were before. And so you will be more likely to be met with some problem solving or discussion around your challenge and your need more so than ever before. And that this is a great opportunity for anybody that's on the sideline and saying, I've been hesitant about this. Know that, there are trends that come and go in the workplace, and there is a limited window that we have right now. And I know this from the business world is right now, leaders and CEOs are saying, what do women think? What do minorities think? What do underrepresented populations think? I don't know if that period is going to last forever. So seize the moment inside your own environments to speak up and advocate for yourself in the event that this hopefully is an ongoing trend, but you never know, right?
That's such good advice. And I think a lot of times we can think that if we speak up about our needs, we're going to meet that with resistance.
Yeah.
But I would go ahead and bet that for the most part, if you're speaking up to an administrator at your school, if you're speaking up to a boss and letting them know what your needs are, they're going to probably support you. They want to know how they can help you. They want to know how they can improve as well. And if you're giving them that data on how things can be improved, then that's great for them, because then they're not wondering, well, how can things be better? They're actually getting information about how things can be better.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we're so afraid to ask for help if we're feeling overwhelmed. And if we ask for help, then most of the time it's met with support. So yeah, to not be afraid to
take
speak
the risk
about your needs.
And then come up with suggestions and ideas and examples of maybe another organization that's doing what you would like to be doing inside your organization, right? Speak to other colleagues about conversations. I mean, you should never go into these conversations, which are already a little nerve-wracking, without doing your preparation and seeing what's possible and having a list of ideas about what you want, and not just saying, I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed or whatever it is. Well, what are your needs? And that's also part of getting to know ourselves. Like, what brings us joy? What brings us support? What are you needing is our job to answer. And so knowing that in the exploration of having that conversation is also essential.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. So this has been a really great conversation. I think it's going to help our listeners to just reflect and kind of think about what's going on for them within their schools, within their divisions. Now, what would be your recommendation to someone that's kind of recognizing, you know what, I am holding on to all these ideals of perfectionism? What would be your kind of step one for them to start breaking down those perfectionism walls that we put up?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's a big nut to crack, and it's hard to know where to start and stop, because the fact remains, sometimes perfectionism can be a motivator and allow you to achieve good grades and work hard and get that promotion. And so you don't want to lose that motivation. And I think that's what you're trying to untangle, is the negative aspects, but not the positive aspects. So one of the things that I recently wrote about on my blog, and you can just look up shibanijoshi.com, is I wrote about the challenge I have as a perfectionist in getting my kids to do their chores, right? I have a 7, 9, and 11-year-old. And I want them to be responsible people and, accountable and contributors in the household. And one of those things is they got to make their bed, they got to put their dishes in the sink, blah, 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 blah. But I have a picture in there of how my son made his bed, and there were stuffed animals, and there was a soccer ball tucked behind his pillow, and the blankets were all messy, and all of these things. And I looked at that bed and I was like, what do I do with this? Right? Like, on one hand, I've read probably the article that all of us have read is like, in the military, the number one thing they teach you is make your bed because it sets you up for the rest of the day. And I'm like, oh my God, look at their bed. What does this set them up for? And on the other hand, I'm like, we got to get out the door by 7:45 so we make it to school on time. And it is that tension, right, of knowing what to let go of and what to keep. And so part of what I write and I explore is I literally list out all the things that I want my kids to do in a day: brush their teeth, put their clothes in the hamper, blah, blah, blah. And it goes from morning to night. And it took a little bit of time to think about it. And then I created a column next to it, which was the attributing values, right? So independence, cleanliness, responsibility, whatever it is. So then I can sort of understand what my core values are. And then I attributed values of like how important it is. Like, you got to brush your teeth. I can't really negotiate on that, but like, can I be flexible on having them help make their lunch? Like, sometimes it's just easier to cut up a bunch of oranges and I can get it done in 2 minutes versus teaching them how to and helping them and supervising like that. That's something I could give up, right? And then the amount of effort that's needed for my participation or for the fulfillment. So for example, if they don't empty their lunch boxes in the sink when they come home, I've got to open every container. It's super gross. I got to dump it out. I get super grumpy. So that is a sort of a high stake thing for me, right? So I've got to figure out what's high value and high stakes for me and what's low value and low stakes. And so from there, I was able to sort of create a table, and you can see it on my piece of like what matters and what doesn't. And focus on, and this is part of sort of what I talk about also, is like the nice thing about the pandemic is that we realized we couldn't check everything off of our to-do list. We couldn't make homemade meals and keep our home clean. I mean, we were having cereal for dinner at my house a lot. And I stopped feeling so guilty about it, right? And what happened for a lot of us is we sort of lowered the bar in terms of the expectations that we put on ourselves. And so I had a girlfriend, and, we would have a running joke. We'd check in with each other. How'd you do? What'd you get done today? And she's like, I got about 52% of the things I wanted done today. And I was like, congratulations, it's over 50%. So it's about like, so our running joke was like, I got 55% of what I want, and that's pretty good. And so keeping our bar reasonable to a reasonable expectation is super important. So expecting your kids to do all these things, and then you're going to go work out, and then you're going to check 20 things off your to-do list and then get all the groceries. Like, we put that on ourselves, but what are the priorities that allow us to get the majority of what we need done on a certain day? That's what we have to identify. And the other thing is, look at a wider time frame. So often we think about our accomplishment or productivity in a given day, or when you go to work and you come back, what did I get done? But one of the things that we can start to do to ease the pressure off of ourselves is to look at a wider time frame. So in a given week, did I exercise? If you identify 3 or 4 priorities, did I exercise? Did I, keep my house clean in a certain way? Did I get X, Y, and Z done? If you can look at it in a week, you have a better chance of fulfilling and having a positive outcome than putting the pressure on yourself to do it in a given day, because life happens, right? So those are some of the techniques that, I discuss with other women, and it seems to be effective. And a lot of this stuff, Kaylee, these are things that we do for our own self, right? No one can say, hey, just let it go, it doesn't matter. And we can be, friends can tell us things, but until we really recalibrate, we're always going to be feeling that sense of being let down or not doing enough. And so we need to bring that down to a more manageable level, look at a wider time frame, and then really prioritize the things that are super meaningful to you. If having a spiritual practice or doing self-care is super meaningful to you, then make sure you get it done. Will that come at the expense of toys on the ground in the playroom? It could be, but if that doesn't matter to you, then let that go. Sure, it would be nice, but those are the things we have to have peace and sanity. And as we all know, that's what matters the most right now.
I love that. So having kind of your absolute necessary list, and then your it would be nice if list. Yeah. And then rather than looking at daily, looking at it over the course of a week. Josiane and I, my co-host on the show and business partner, we have at the end of the week, we have a little discussion in Slack. So it's like a messaging thing that we use. And we have a specific channel where we just talk about our wins for the week. So at the end of the week, we talk about all the things that we did, what we checked off our list, what went well. And it's kind of just a celebration of the week. And every single week, I can tell you, I go into it being like, I don't think I got much done this week. Yeah. And then I write everything down. I'm like, oh my gosh, no, I actually fulfilled my priorities. I did the things that were most important. And then I end my week feeling good and proud of myself, rather than if I hadn't listed it, then for some reason, the voice in my head is telling me I didn't do enough. But when I write it down, I see that, wow, I've actually done a lot and I can be proud of myself. But if I were to do that at the end of every day, I don't think I would be quite as excited than I am at the end of the week.
It's like, don't get on the scales every day. That doesn't help you. Just go once a week. We've got to elongate the time period by which we're evaluating our successes.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Well, this was such an excellent conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. How can our listeners get in touch with you or find your resources after this?
Yeah, so you you can just go to my website, which is shibanijoshi.com, SHIBANIJOSHI.com. On there, I have kind of two tabs. One for I do a lot of business and tech news. So if you're interested in, like easy to understand, like my latest piece was like, what is crypto? And because people have a lot of questions about that and what's Web3 and meta and all that stuff. So I break things down in a really simplistic way. And then I have another tab of my blog, Boldly Forward, and I write about sort of my personal experiences with balance and letting go of perfectionism and being a working mom and all that good stuff. So, and sign up for my newsletter. I have lots of fresh content coming out, some new stuff. And so would love to have everybody part of my community. And thank you for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. I hope this episode helped you to reflect on maybe some perfectionistic tendencies you might have in your own life, and maybe ways that you can start unraveling those high expectations that you put on yourself and really narrowing down your focus to ensure that you're spending your time and your energy on the things that you truly value, and maybe cutting out or cutting down on the things that aren't really pulling you towards your long-term goals. For show notes on this episode, go to educalm.com/TBE158. So that's spelled educalme.com/TBE as in the Balanced Educator 158. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone that you think would get value from it too. We appreciate you and all the awesomeness you bring into the world just by being yourself. Take care.